I call the meeting to order. Thank you, Carlin. Parashar Patel, Chair of the Finance Committee meeting. And I think because we have some folks on Zoom, we have to do a roll call.
Yep.
So the clerk will take it away.
Okay. All right. Suresh. Peggy Briggs. No. Kathy Kukalo.
Present.
Thank you. Eric Dahlberg.
Present.
John Garofalo. No. I know he's absent. Greg Guardiello.
Here.
Amrit Kumar is also absent. Don Kupka.
Here.
Lindsay Liss.
Present.
Dee Ortner. Here. Parashar Patel.
Here.
Carlin Reed.
Present.
Chris Reynolds.
Here.
Thank you, Chris. Quasi, Thad Rusman. Nope. And Lois Wassoff. Okay.
The agenda. All right, thank you very much, Dee. Just to provide context, we're in the middle of the public hearings. We heard from the town and the schools last Thursday. After that hearing, Finance Committee voted on a number of warrants, deferred some, and approved, recommended affirmative action on others. Today, we're going to hear from a couple warrant sponsors that are going to be presenting on Tuesday. Thought this would be a good opportunity for us just to get any questions out there. They can modify their presentations, et cetera, if they choose to do so. We were scheduled originally to have CPC also come, but we did not hear back from CPC. So they're not on the agenda. They will presumably be there Tuesday. We will find out whether they're there Tuesday or not. So with that, let's go to Article 19, Minuteman Regional School. Take it away.
Thank you. I'm Steve Ledoux. I'm the Concord rep to the Minuteman Regional Vocational Technical School District. This is my 5th year on the school committee. I'm currently chair of the finance subcommittee, so been involved with the development of the budget, which will be presented to you. I also have been chair of the faculty negotiating subcommittee, and we're in our first year of a 3-year contract with those folks as well. I will introduce Nikki Andre, the school business manager, in a minute or so to give the presentation. But you know, like a lot of entities, this has been a kind of a transition year, a year in flux for for Minuteman. We've been in the process of hiring a new superintendent. We do have an offer extended to an individual who is an assistant superintendent on the South Shore, and we're in the process of finalizing a contract. Well, hopefully will be finalized sometime next week. So, you know, I was just reflecting back on the 5 years I've been on the school committee, and like everybody, it's been one thing after another. You know, we opened a new school, then COVID hit, then the superintendent resigned. We hired a new superintendent, then that superintendent had to leave for certain circumstances, and now we're hiring a new superintendent. So it's been a year in flux. But the good news is Concord continues to increase enrollment at Minuteman. And last evening, we had a report from the admissions folks that I believe there are 12 admissions acceptances of Concord students for the upcoming school year, and all 12 have accepted. So, you know, Concord continues to grow and continues to provide great students to our school system. So with that, I'd like to introduce Nikki Andre, who is our school business manager and used to work at CC a while ago, she tells me. So anyway, let me turn it over to Nikki.
Thanks, Steve. Nikki, go right ahead.
Thank you.
Liz is going to copy that presentation.
Well, thank you for having me. Unfortunately, interim superintendent Kevin Mahoney wasn't able to make it today. He was assistant superintendent of finance back before I started 2019. So it was certainly a joy putting the budget together. He had a bunch of historical knowledge, and has certainly been a great mentor this year. As we look at the budget, we can go to the next slide. We really like to, think about our priorities, which is our staff and our students. And on the next slide, we have a highlight of some of the Concord students that are at Minuteman and the accomplishments. So of the 4 Concord graduates last year, they all went on to 4-year colleges, and the colleges are listed. We have 41 students in 18 of the 19 major programs at Minuteman. And this is a picture of one of the seniors, Sam, who's been a great ambassador at the school. We have 4 co-op students out. And athletic achievements, Muji was the Boston Globe Player of the Week and an all-star in basketball. So we really like to just, before we dive into the numbers, really kind of give you a sense of, who we're creating this budget for, and it's all these great students. So of the preliminary assessment for Concord, without the school building project, $1.3 million. With the debt excluded school building project, about $1.7 million, which is, as I had mentioned, debt excluded. Overall, our budget is 3.96% above FY24 at $31.5 million. And just to break it down a little bit further, our operating is 2.99% above FY24. Our capital recommendation is quite a bit more increased over FY24, and that's due to the funding in our capital stabilization, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on that in the presentation. And our school building project, as it's debt excluded, we like to break that out for you, but majority of our funding is secured now, so it's really just following our amortization schedules. Overall, the assessments to member towns is up 0.82% compared to last year. It is somewhat of an anomaly this year, so we will go into detail, just so it's certainly not an expectation going forward. Some of our budget drivers, the CBA, we had a 3.5% increase for the staff plus steps and lanes. We did have a reduction in 2 administrative positions, assistant director of CTE, career and technical education, as well as a human resource position. Our director of operations kind of took that under her umbrella when she started in October. One of the priorities for the budget is to bring back some grant-funded positions that were cut during COVID. We have 2 aides as well as a co-op coordinator that are being grant-funded currently. When you net those out with the reduction in the 2 administrative positions, it is a decrease in payroll expense. We had to fund an additional foreign language teacher this year. We had a teacher retire that spoke Spanish and French, so a little bit of an anomaly. And we've had increased interest in our foreign language, so we did have to hire a new teacher this year, and we are proposing continued funding for that teacher. As well as an athletic trainer. The past 2 years, it's been very difficult to find contracted service trainers, especially to follow the MIA regulations. So, we're trying to invest in the athletic program. We've seen such a big increase since COVID in students really wanting to get involved, be part of the athletic teams, and we've been seeing some really great performances. So that position would help with training, the weight room, as well as attending the games. Continued budget drivers is transportation, a 5% CPI, an additional day for the 3:30 bus. Again, we're seeing so many students interested in the extracurricular activities. They want to stay after for homework help. They want to get involved in different clubs. And unfortunately, with only 2 days a week, this 3:30 bus, they have to pick what they want to do. So this will give them an option to get a little bit more involved in the school and being on campus. Our utilities, now that we've had a full year of just the students being in our building, our new building, we did our own calculation, and we met with our energy consultant. We're seeing a decrease in the utilities expense for next year. Anticipated savings, which is great. Our health insurance, we're able to level fund as well. So last year we anticipated a 10% increase. It actually ended up being 0%. We're part of the Mass Bay Health Trust Fund. And so because of that budget increase last year, we're able to level fund it this year with the expected increase because the premiums were lower. And cybersecurity is such a big thing, such a big risk on everyone's mind, data protection, really looking to invest in cybersecurity this year for Minuteman. We're funding our OPEB, $315,000 into the trust fund, plus our active retirees. That's an $85,000 increase. Our OPEB is currently about $23 million, and our trust fund is about $870,000. So we certainly have a ways to go. Our school committee met in 2021 and put together a OPEB study committee. And the plan for funding going forward is our ESCO lease, which is an energy saving lease, is falling off the books. It'll be fully paid next year. Our plan is to increase our contribution to OPEB by $300,000 one time and increase it 5% every year after that. With that strategy, we'd be fully funded in about FY46. And it's just something that we know that we really have to start focusing on and putting some contributions towards. Our debt service, the athletic fields are finally starting to, see we're starting to see some revenue from the renters. So we were able to this year, with the money we received last year, offset the debt that we got that was voted on by all of our member towns. So you'll see that as a offset in your member town assessments this year. It's about $113,000. Lastly, the big item that we saw the big increase in percentage was our capital stabilization fund. We had previously funded this account $500,000, and we're proposing $850,000 this year, a $350,000 increase. That will put our projected balance at just under 3.1 million, and it'll put the district in a good spot to maintain the potential use of the campus. In our next slide, I'm going to show you our east building, which is really what we have the money earmarked for. It's an unoccupied building on campus. Our architect looked at it. The scope of work for 7,000 square feet is about $7 million. The school that we have now was built for 628 students, and there just isn't enough space in the building, and the building wasn't built for our animal science program. So we're really looking for a permanent space for this animal science program. Over February break, we moved them to a temporary space adjacent to an adjacent building on our campus called Mill Street, 20 Mill Street. It's their third year, so the program's continuing to grow. So it's definitely a temporary space. So what we'd like to do with this space is potentially with some capital skills grant funding, really renovate it. It's a depreciating asset right now. We need to really look at the exterior structure of it, the roof, and make sure we don't lose this asset. So that's really our priority. We did put a RFI out to potentially partner. We were seeing the vision for this being half of a vet tech clinic and so they could have the hands-on learning and half classroom space. Unfortunately, this time around, we didn't get any responses back. So they'll be meeting with the capital planning committee to kind of determine what the next steps will be. So as we talk about enrollment with the new school, we saw an increase in enrollment, in particular with our member towns. 686, we have 649 member town students and 37 non-member town students. Those students are finishing their program, so as the juniors and seniors leave, you'll see that number continue to decrease.
Which number, to be clear? Which number?
The non-member towns. So the past 2 years, we've had full freshman class member towns. And this year, we have gotten all of the member towns acceptance. So we had 175 allocated seats, and right now, as of yesterday, we had 175 member town students accept. There were 210 overall applicants. So there were a portion that denied. We do have 52 out-of-district students on the wait list, so we may potentially see some come in if any of our member town students drop off. So Concord in particular, you're the breakout of your 41 students. You have 6 students in senior and juniors, and 16 sophomores, 13 freshmen. So when you think about how this budget is created, it's based on a 4-year rolling average. You'll likely see in the next 2 years, if you continue on with higher enrollment, you're going to be paying a higher portion of Minuteman's budget. So you'll have a little bit higher of assessment because of the correlation of how our budget is put together. So the shift in students is causing a shift in our revenue too. We have been able to offset member town assessments by the revenue we've received from out-of-district students. Unfortunately, that won't be able to happen if we don't have any more out-of-district students. So it's such a blessing and a benefit to have our member town students, but we want you to realize the financial implications that has as well. So here we just provided some detail on what the financial impact will be for tuition, incremental special education fee, and our capital fee. So in the next 3 years, you can kind of plan out that know in advance that offset will decrease in the next 2 fiscal years. In here, you'll see our total preliminary assessments year to year and our total 4-year rolling average year to year. You'll see for Concord, the preliminary assessment 5.5%, while the 4-year rolling average is up 13.4%. Overall, the 0.8% increase of member town assessments and a 12.6% increase overall in the 4-year rolling average for our member towns. This is a historical trend. So as I mentioned, our 4-year rolling average is strongly correlated with your percent change in your assessments. And you'll see that for the past 4 years, it's been pretty spot on. This year, as I mentioned, kind of an anomaly of why our assessments are a little bit lower that I'll continue to explain to you. The decrease is not typical of a budget year because of the declining out-of-district and capital fee enrollment. So as I mentioned before, this will continue to decrease over the next 3 years. The first year implementation of the athletic fields, that also has a bit of an impact just for this one time, but we'll continue to fund that and offset our member town assessments year to year. But our biggest driver in why it seems to be a bit lower is our adjustment in Chapter 70 state aid. So last year, we vote our budget at the end of January, and as you know, the governor's budget didn't come out until March. So we estimated our Chapter 70 aid, and we actually received about $780,000 more than our estimate. So if you want to go on to the next page. We had about 2.2 estimated, and we received about 2.9, almost $3 million. And the impact on Concord would have been approximately $46,000. Kevin Mahoney and myself met with all the town.
Sorry, so does that mean our actual assessment last year was 46,000 less than what you had projected? I'm confused here. So you received more?
Yeah, it was higher. If we had the proper Chapter 70 number in there
Yeah.
when it was voted, your assessment would have been lower.
So how, but you assumed 2.2 million and you received almost 3 million.
Correct.
So why would our assessment have been higher if the grant coming in was higher?
Because timing.
It's the timing.
It's timing, but I think Nikki Parashar was just going to explain some of that.
Okay, fair enough, I'll wait, thank you.
Yeah.
So if you want to continue on to the next slide. So, we realized that was a significant amount of money, and we, myself and Kevin Mahoney met with all of the town managers for all of the 9 member towns to discuss what our plan should be for that excess Chapter 70 money that was received last year. The alternative proposal that we've put together is to try to close out our MSBA project. So we currently have an outstanding ban of $2.8 million. And our estimated MSBA reimbursement is about $2.2 million. We are anticipating that to be closed out around September, October this year. We have a balance to be financed of about $565,000. If you add some interest, that's about $615,000. So what we are proposing is that we will amend our budget and use our E&D to pay off the remainder of our MSBA project instead of financing it over the next 5 years. It would save approximately $145,000 in interest. And we were able to reduce the budget this year by $150,000 in total if we are able to do this. So this will be brought up to our school committee next month, and it will be presented to all of our member towns. And we would need 2/3 approval to be able to do this. So just summarizing, again, our operating budget, 2.99%, our capital increase really due to our capital stabilization, and our school building project overall, just less than 4% in total. Operating capital, 3.96. Here is really where you'll see that Chapter 78. So it looks like there's a significant increase in our Chapter 78, but if you actually look at what we received compared to what we're expected to receive next year, it's more or less level funded. So, you know, if you were to actually input the amount we received, our member town assessments would really be up more like 3 to 4%. And again, you'll see our facilities rental revolving revenue, that $113,000 being offset this year in FY25. And these are just the buckets, you know, highlighting again the ESCO lease is coming out in FY25. FY26 will be the first year we don't have that ESCO lease, and we'll certainly plan to utilize that money towards OPEB. And that's the end of our presentation, so I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Vicki. I saw one hand go up. I see Greg maybe asked a question, Carlin. Let's go in that order, and then we'll go to Zoom.
Okay. Thank you very much for
Yeah.
the presentation.
Absolutely.
Let me pull this in. I do have several questions
Okay.
for you. One is, you talked about the utilities and how the cost of utilities has gone down based on the 23 numbers. And it's interesting because last year at the presentation, that was one of their biggest concerns. So does it look like it's going to be a concern coming up again, or
I don't believe so. I think, you know, we opened the building and then COVID hit, right? And then we slowly started bringing students in, 25%, 50%. We really never got an understanding of the building and the
Okay.
utilization of it.
Okay.
Last year, we're able to see a full year of students being in the building and really get a sense of what our utility cost should be. And we're hoping that this budget reflects a more accurate utilities expense.
Okay, thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
number one. Number two, when do you think the non-member communities will be out of the system?
So there's 2 more grades finishing up, juniors and seniors. There's, you know, we do sometimes take transfers at sophomore year, so that's those 2 students in FY, you know, 3 years out, FY 27, maybe 28. So if the trend continues, that's what we would see. We are seeing, again, will be the 3rd year of member towns students taking up the freshman class. If any drop off, we may fill those slots with out-of-district students, but the regional agreement, you know, guarantees our member town students
Right.
access first.
Okay,
And part of the irony actually is the fact that two of the declarant towns have actually approached us wanting to come back in, which I can only speak for myself as a school committee member, but I'm really hesitant to do that because they have found that a lot of the voc ed schools are similar to us, that there's just not a lot of room for out-of-district placement. So kids in these towns that pulled out a Minuteman are now having a hard time trying to accommodate them. So, I guess the moral is be careful what you wish for sometimes, but on your rate.
Okay. I wanted to know about your E&D account.
Yep.
Do you fully fund your E&D account?
So our E&D this year was about 1.5 million. It was slightly over the 5%, but we are giving back $650,000 in our budget
Right.
to the member towns, so that's more than the excess.
Okay.
Our goal for our school committee is to keep it between 3 to 5%.
Everybody's goal is like that, right?
Yes.
And then
course.
my final question, oh, did you want to say something else? No? You're fine online?
Steve, did you have a comment on that?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, well, the state law is 5%, so we're
Right.
kind of,
Right, yeah. My last one is the $7 million for the animal building. Is that just for the building?
It's for a portion of the building.
A portion of the building, okay. And then what about equipment, et cetera, that you would be moving into that? Do you have all of that already, or is that another expense?
So the animal science program, we were very blessed to last year get a capital skills grant of $500,000. So majority of the necessary items that they have has been funded by grant funding.
Okay, and you don't have anyone who's in line to take care of the building at this point in time, to renovate it? Is that correct?
That would be certainly something we would look forward to. But no, we don't have a partner right now.
You don't have a partner to do the exterior
No.
work? Okay.
It's something kind of.
It's a work in progress.
It is. So the RFI, the request for information, went out in February. We just got notified that there were no responses. So now they're kind of trying to think of what the next steps were. The plan would have been to try to partner with a vet clinic and then they
Right.
would take on half of the project. So I think now it's kind of creative thinking, right? What are we going to do and what will the next steps be? So.
Thank you very much.
this is going to be a top priority for the new superintendent to try to finalize and find a partner. We did have a potential partner a year or so ago, but for whatever reason, their interest waned. So, and I think that involved when the past superintendent retired. So the new superintendent, she knows that's going to be her marching order to get this thing moving forward.
Well, I recall also last year that you did talk a lot about the animal husbandry or animal science program, that it had been very successful. Okay.
Yeah, it
Well,
is.
it's very popular,
Yeah.
it's a growing field, other voc-ed schools are doing it, like Monty Tech out in, I guess, Fitchburg. So it's a growing field, and there's a lot of kids interested.
Thank you. Thank you.
Greg?
Yeah, I got two questions, Anthony. Reference that slide if you want. The first question is for the 113 and facilities. Is that athletic fields, or is that a combination of stuff in building as well? Or is it
That
mainly-
is debt that we took to finish the athletic field.
That's not revenue you got?
So the offset is being funded by the rental revenue we're getting by renting the fields to, we have different, Boston Bolts, Leslie University.
And is that, how much revenue do you get from renting the fields? Is that 113 as well, when you say offset?
Oh, that's a portion of it. We also are saving each year a portion to replenish or replace the turf in about 10 years. So we have our goal for that fund is to be able to fund the replacement of the turf reserve as well as offset the debt.
Okay. And just a clarification on the slide that
Yep.
Anthony pulled up there. So this is for the out-of-town students,
Correct,
correct?
yep.
So in FY '24 or FY '25 assessment, you're getting $818,000 from that town, and then you're losing 21 students? Is that how I'm reading this?
Yep.
And then you're losing more, and so by '28, you're going to have no revenue from,
If the trend
If the
continues,
trend
that
continues with
we
that way-
accept,
that way.
yep, just
Okay.
member towns.
Thank
Yep,
you very much.
correct.
Okay, Carlin, and then we're going to go to Zoom, and then we'll get to Eric and Lindsay.
Okay, I also have two questions.
Hi.
Hi. First is, how do you pick the Concord students? I mean, is there a quota that come from Concord versus other towns, or how do you select the students from Concord? What's the formula?
Well, I'll speak to a little bit, then
great.
Nikki could correct me when I'm wrong. But based on population, et cetera, there are allocated slots. Now, we've never reached the allocated slots yet. If in fact push came to shove, it would happen. But basically, there's an application process, there's an interview process. We look at obviously at students' grades. We look at their any disciplinary issues, all type of things to do the acceptance. But I think Concord, and I can't remember, maybe Nikki knows, are guaranteed, I think, 15 slots if in the worst case scenario.
So they're guaranteed
That's
15
correct.
slots out
Yep.
in the freshman class. Okay, second, who are your utility providers? Specifically electricity and internet?
We use National Grid
National Grid for gas and for electricity?
for, definitely for gas, I believe for electricity too, and then internet, we use Comcast.
Okay, thanks, that's it.
Before I stay in the room, let me see if anybody on Zoom has any questions. Chris?
Yep, thanks. I have a couple of questions. So am I correct, the building, the new building will not allow you to increase enrollment?
Correct. It had been talked about in previous years to try to increase enrollment to 800. Right now, and Steve can certainly jump in, the school committee kind of reviewed the space. There's enough vocational space, but what we're tight on is academic space. So right now, we've decided to limit the enrollment to 175 per grade instead of 200 to kind of get back down to what the building can hold, and then really our priority is to just find a space for animal science.
Okay, thank you. The closeout that you showed us with respect to the debt.
Yep.
So is that gap caused by the fields?
They did estimated borrowing before the project was finished, so it was expected that we do one more small amount of borrowing. And it kind of worked out, thank you, Kevin Mahoney, a few years ago, because it's a much lower interest rate. But there was an expectation to have a small amount of financing left in the band. in the
Okay,
bond,
so
sorry.
that's not a surprise, that's good.
Yep.
And then lastly, so your total change in assessment is about 200,000. Concord's change is 91, so we almost got 50% of the change in the assessment. I'm just curious how that math works. Is that because our minimum requirement is very high?
So, overall, the minimum required contribution went up about 9%, but in particular for Concord, it did go up about 18%.
Is that set by the state?
It is set by the state, yep. So.
Okay, so how much, so that's a bump, right? So the state told us we have to pay more.
Yeah, that's about 110,000. I'm trying to go back to the slide that has, 200,000. And it's, our operating budget, as I had mentioned, is strongly aligned with our four-year rolling average. Our capital calculation has 50% of the four-year rolling average. It also looks at the DESI's debt yield, and then 1% is to every member town. So I'd say that it is pretty strongly correlated with the four-year rolling average. But I'd be happy to dig into the numbers a little bit more if that doesn't satisfy your answer.
No, I just wanted to, having the minimum go up a lot has to be a driver too,
Yeah.
so, okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we'll come back into the room. I've got Eric, Lindsay, and Don.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
Kind of along the same lines as Chris's question on that same slide, the FY25 preliminary assessments. I'm not totally following the math on town by town, why the assessments are changing the way they are. Concord's, our four-year rolling average is up 13%. Our assessment is up 5.5%. Arlington, their enrollment is up 10%. Thanks. their enrollment is up 10%, but their assessment is actually going down.
Correct. So,
How,
so is that the end of your question?
yeah. Well, how is that? How is that?
So what I mentioned before, the Chapter 70, it looks like, there's a really big increase in the state revenue offset. If we funded in our budget what the Chapter 70 aid that we actually received this year, Concord's assessment would be 7.9%. So it'd be closer to your 4-year rolling average. If we took out the field offset, that's another chunk of money. It's about $7,000. So it would have gone from 5.5 to 5.9%. So I think those two are the big major drivers. If, Arlington, for example, we just presented there, their impact was about, for the athletic fields, about 40,000, and then their offset of the Chapter 70, they make out about 35% of Minuteman. So those are and that's certainly why we had that slide, was to kind of let you know that if these couple things weren't happening, the assessments overall to the member towns and each town and overall would be a little bit higher.
Lindsay?
So what % of your overall budget is made up by grants, like the grants that you receive, and has that changed dramatically in the last couple of years?
That's a great question. I don't have the percent off the top of my head. I can certainly get it for you. We typically have our title grants, our Perkins grants, the 240 grant. We've seen a lot of new competitive grants this year. We have one for high-quality instructional materials, and they're going to be funding some of our math curriculum. We've got an SEL mental health grant, and they've been able to do a lot of new PD. Certainly, as you know, the ESSER grants, they'll expire this year. But we have seen a bit more of the competitive grants for the school, and we have our Minuteman Technical Institute as well, which is adult ed programming, and they've seen a considerable amount of CTI funding, and that's been able to let them run some adult programs tuition free, to be able to help the adult workforce get in, learn the skills they need, and then help them get job placement. So I'd say the last 2 CTI grants we've had round 3, round 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. The last round we got 900,000, and they're going for 900,000 again. So we've certainly seen a huge uptick, in particular with that program as well. I can certainly get you the percentage of the total budget though as well.
Yeah, that would be great, just to see if that's changing
Yep.
year over year.
Don?
Yep, sure. Thanks very much for this. Very helpful tonight. 2 questions. First is for the request for next week's hearing. Could you include a slide showing the operating budget cost per student and how it's trended over the years? So this is, apart from funding sources or assessments, just the operating budget cost per student.
Per pupil?
Yep. And then the second question is about just a more general question. I remember the conversation last year about veterinary technology and the need for it, and of course the same is true of medical technology. And I know that Michael Bloomberg's foundation has given $250 million to help establish med technology coursework, and Boston is on that list. I was wondering if that's on our radar screen, and if there's any interest in adding that to our program.
I will get some additional information and include it in the Tuesday presentation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple questions. One is a little bit along the lines of what Don asked for, but if it's possible for next week, some notion of outcomes, right? For outcomes, students' outcomes. Like, how do you assess whether you're doing a good job or not? And then compare that to comparator schools. And more than happy to send a deck that I had prepared that we did for CPS.
Okay.
Basically 5-year trends, and I think 5-year trend on spending per pupil is a good one. But it'd be helpful to put that in context of, well, what are some other similar comparator schools look like? So that would be one request to the extent it's possible, right?
So we do have a plan to present to the finance committee a 3-year projection
Okay.
on Monday. So that's certainly something.
Your finance committee, the
Yep.
school committee?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
To the
Okay.
finance committee,
That's a
so-
projection.
Yeah, projections
Okay.
for the future. And then we did some work on the per pupil cost. I can certainly include that in the presentation, or I can speak to it now. It's,
No, I think in the presentation's fine, yeah. And again, outcomes also. So what are we getting for our money there would be helpful, right?
we definitely have some data on like MCAS.
Whatever you guys, so you'll see, we looked at MCAS, SATs, whatever you think is appropriate for your students to be measured on
Okay.
for outcomes. That would be one request. Second question is, do you have a 10-year strategic plan or a 5-year strategic plan? Does the capital plan, sorry, well, strategic plan and capital plan.
They are working on currently working on a capital plan. There is not one set in place yet, but it's something. That's
And when will that be available?
Well, the school committee just Tuesday night reformed the capital planning committee, so they just got reappointed Tuesday night. They haven't even met yet, so I'm not sure what the timetable is, but, you know, we recognize that as a priority. So we have a new school subcommittee, and it also includes some outside folks that aren't members of the school committee to work on it with us.
That sounds great, Steve. And when you guys get that plan and sort of timeline, if you can send a letter to FinCom saying, hey, this is the timeline, et cetera, and kind of what we're aiming for, that would be great. And then the last question, maybe a legal question. I don't know if it's possible or not. But you said right now, don't get used to this low rate of assessments. So I'm just curious, is it possible to level fund or pre-fund some of our assessments or not? So in other words, you know, not that we've got a lot of money in the bank, Carrie, but to the extent that we don't want we're anticipating a 15% increase in fiscal years 28 and 29. If we want to set some money aside, say $600,000 from a stabilization fund, is that something that is even possible for us to do? So again, I don't need an answer now, but maybe a response back that says, hey, yeah, you know what, the towns do have this ability to, and whether we have to do it internal to town books or whether we actually have to give the money and you guys keep it on your books as separate, but it would be helpful to know how much flexibility we have to smooth out these assessments.
I mean, my first thought is we are capped by the 5% E&D. So,
Fair enough.
I think operationally that might be tough. I think I can certainly look into funding capital, but the school committee is then determines what to do with that money.
Yep.
So it may be something where selfishly
Hold on.
Concord may want to keep it on their books.
Anthony's got
But
an
I
answer.
can certainly ask the question to our lawyers and get back to you on that.
Oh, hold on, let's see
So
what
we
happens.
could create a stabilization fund and then draw
Oh,
down from that.
Okay, there you go. Okay, thank
You
you.
have the middle school stabilization. We do. So you could do a minimum
We could do, yep,
stabilization?
okay, thank you. That's it. Any other questions? All right, Nikki, thank you very much. Steve, thank you very much. We'll see you guys next Tuesday.
See you on Tuesday.
Yeah, I apologize for not being there in person. I just had surgery last
Yeah.
week, so I'm housebound for a month.
That's all right. Hope you recover.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, we are going to be hearing from the 250 Celebration Committee. Thank you.
Right. Right, I forgot.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Carmen's got it. Is it on?
All right,
Good evening. My name is Gary Clayton, and I'm currently chair of the Concord 250 Executive Committee. So thank you for the invitation to meet with the Finance Committee. My address is 31 Black Birch Lane. And with me this evening, Fred Ryan, who serves as chair of our Public Safety Subcommittee. His address is number Park Street.
211 Park Lane.
Good. So we obviously want to speak tonight and answer any questions you may have relative to Article 13 that is presently on the town meeting warrant. And I will say at the outset, and I'll keep this short, but I want to just provide some context for you. The executive committee was established by the select board about 2 years ago. The charge for the executive committee was rather broad in terms of what the interests, the expectations, the opportunities are for celebrating the 250th anniversary of the beginning of the American Revolution here in Concord. So that scope of activities range from many different types of programs, parades, ceremonies, and the like. We are working now closely, and I suspect this is very different from some years in the past, with a number of our neighboring communities, and we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about that. And doing so, recognize that this event, and we're focusing on April 19th, 2025, but let me say that the processes and the programs and the activities have already begun. They began last year. We're continuing and ramping those through this calendar year into 2025 and then extend into 2026. That's an opportunity, obviously, to recognize the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. We're working closely with the National Park Service that also has a very ambitious agenda that extends even well beyond 2026. My point in mentioning that is that the events that we are engaged in now and certainly will culminate in April 2025 will be of a scale that's very different than what we've experienced here in Concord relative to Patriots' Day. And that's a reflection of the fact that not only is this an event that's very important to this community in a sense of who we are, but regionally, statewide, nationally, and I would submit in some cases perhaps even internationally as well. All of which is to say that that is likely, we anticipate, to bring many, many more people to Concord. Now, some will shake their heads or run in a different direction and say, please, I need to be out of town that week. But I will put this in the positive and recognize that we're talking about and proposing is a further investment on the part of the taxpayers of Concord, because I do see it as an investment in terms of monies that will be realized both for the town, hopefully for local businesses and the like, and for our reputation well beyond 2025. A couple of other key things to keep in mind as we look at 2025, and this was something that 2 years ago we began to think about, okay, the date, April 19th, what day of the week does that fall on, and what other activities or events are happening in and around that time? It's because we have both secular and religious holidays happening at that same time in 2025. So there are a number of important religious holidays that begin the week prior to April 19th. The 19th is a Saturday. Sunday is Easter. Monday is Marathon Monday. The other thing I want to mention, and it becomes important in the context of the public safety discussion this evening, is that in November of 2024, we will be once again going through a national election. And we can only look back in recent times to understand what can happen in the midst of that political debate. So all those factors come into play in terms of what we are doing, what we're thinking about, and frankly, the level of uncertainty that we face as we begin to put together our operating budget for this event. So what we'd like to do this evening, because our proposal to town meeting under Article 13 is to request additional funding, yes, additional funding for public safety. And what I hope we can share with you tonight is a little bit more of the background, the information about why do we need to spend that much money on that. I will say at the outset, when I joined this committee, And we're looking at how much we might need to spend for this, I thought, really? This much? And the answer in my mind right now is yes. Hopefully, as we present more information for you this evening, it may clarify some of the questions and concerns that you might have about this. So let me turn this over to Fred Ryan, who can run through a series of slides that'll provide you with more background information regarding public safety.
Thank you, Gary. You know, I'm beginning to reevaluate. Maybe I could Airbnb my house that weekend and get out of town.
There's nobody from England that's going to be invited?
I'm sorry?
Never mind.
Oh, no, from England? Yes. We actually, there are invitations going out, the VIP invitations are going out, and there are a number of international individuals, including, yes, members of the British royal family, U.S. British ambassador, British consul, the French consul, and on it goes. And yes, also significant VIPs within the national level, the state level as well. So, yeah, we expect a lot of interest and attention on this matter. Fred.
Thank you. So Fred Ryan again, I'm here with Chief Tom Judge from the Fire Department, CPW Director Alan Cathcart, and Lieutenant Landers from the Police Department. And I think Rick is here from the Executive Committee as well, Rick Laughlin, our Finance Chair. Again, thank you. My background is indeed in law enforcement. I began my career here in Concord as a police officer and finished my career as police chief in Arlington, where I served there as 20 years as a police chief. I'm now working with town staff. I want to thank the town manager and Anthony and all the staff really have been extraordinarily supportive of our committee and helping to prepare for this presentation and others. So really want to thank Anthony and the staff and the manager. So in terms of planning for public safety, one point I want to drive home right out of the gate is, we call it public safety, but it's really all municipal assets, right? Police, fire, public works, public health. Melanie from Public Health has been very engaged, and all of the resources that come to bear with planning a major event such as the one that Gary described. In planning for the event, we've done a couple of things, right? Who's the wise person that said if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it? Was that Churchill? Who was that, Gary? I forget who it was, but yeah. So we've looked very closely at what occurred in 1975, what was done well, where there was opportunities for improvement, so that we don't, make those mistakes again. And obviously we have a few, as Gary pointed out, other dynamics at play in terms of our planning. So we've made some what we feel are very responsible assumptions, right? So we have basically 4 host communities for the big event on Saturday, April 19th. We'll point out that, we've all agreed that it will be Saturday in 2025 for the reasons that Gary pointed out, the Boston Marathon and other logistical challenges with actually holding our celebrations on that Monday. Federal and state resources will have already been deployed and staged in and around the Boston Marathon venues. So we have to plan on drawing resources from outside of the region and potentially outside of the Commonwealth. We can expect large numbers of spectators. The venues are difficult to manage from a public safety perspective. It's a sort of a linear celebration on the big day. And again, we do expect dignitaries, and invites have already gone out to many of the dignitaries. There will be national, potentially international media coverage. And one area of concern that I have, and I know that Police Chief Mulcahy has, is that we don't know what the political climate will be and what the potential is for any social unrest, following the election, et cetera. Keeping in mind in 1975, and we'll show a quick snippet, that there were approximately 12,000 protesters up on the Hill at Buttrick's Mansion that were very strategically located on the opposite side of the river from the President of the United States and other dignitaries. But we have to plan, we have to have a robust plan in place that's scalable, right? We need a plan that can be scaled up depending on what information is incoming from our federal partners leading into the events, or potentially scale down if you know, we're not seeing issues of social unrest, et cetera. Anthony, can we advance the slide, please? Thank you. So those are really sort of the assumptions that we've used to begin our planning. The big day, you know, here's sort of the layout of the events. Keep in mind, you know, in 1975, the crowds began arriving the day before, and the word on the street was if you didn't have a place on the parade route by 2 a.m., you were out of luck. And so I know the fire chief and public works director and the police chief really planned to go operational many days in advance of Saturday, and they've already alerted their staff that they can plan to be on duty throughout the weekend on rotating schedules. Next slide, please, Anthony. Sorry. You want to give me the...
She's actually my assistant's running it.
Oh, okay.
So I say next slide.
Well, you're good. See, I told you these guys are good. There's been a lot of discussion about the potential for a federal SEER designation. I just wanted to discuss that with the FinCom so that we're all sort of operating from the same baseline and aligned. You know, a SEER rating comes from the Department of Homeland Security. There are, as you can see up in the right-hand corner there are sort of 5 levels of a SEER rating. The only time that I'm unaware of, and Chief Judge may correct me, that we've had a level 1 in Massachusetts was the marathon following the year of the tragic bombings. That was a level 1. I don't believe there have been any others here in the Commonwealth. And just to be clear, and I don't want to waste too much time on this slide, but I think that there may be some misinformation in the community about what a SEER rating would bring. It would bring federal subject matter experts. It would bring federal personnel. It would not bring money. I want to be abundantly clear about that. And we're engaged with our federal partners anyways. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our planning work groups. You know, it's going to be important that we stay closely aligned with our federal partners as they begin to hear chatter and start to begin to develop, you know, intelligence reports that we can then, you know, plan and act on. But, you know, the bottom right-hand corner, you know, they'll send, if we do get a SEER rating, and it could be combined with a marathon, who knows, maybe the feds will make the whole weekend a SEER designated event, and that will bring with it, you know, subject matter experts, specialty units, cyber risk assessments, venue screening, intelligence field teams, et cetera. But want to be clear with the FinCom and the honorable members of the FinCom that it will not bring dollars to our operation. Thank you. So if we could, you know, obviously not, I encourage you to watch this video. It's really interesting, but maybe if we could jump to 45 seconds and stop there, Anthony? Yep, just do it. Oh. Yeah, you are good. So you're going to see one of the reenactors yawning here. Yeah, he's had a long night. Yeah. But if we could jump right to 45 seconds, I don't want to waste the committee's and hold it at 45. Is that possible? Yep, she's doing it. Yeah. Right there. You know, this really illustrates the challenge that we'll have from a public safety perspective. I mean, you see,
Pause that.
It's okay, we saw it. We can
yeah,
keep going. We saw it.
And jump ahead to 118 and hold it there briefly, please. You know, just want to illustrate the crowds and the protesters. Jumping ahead to 152 and hold it there. Again, want to be respectful of your time. These are the demonstrators on the opposite side of the river, estimated by the Park Service to be 12,000 people. Also, keep in mind, the fire department transported 26 people by ambulance from that venue, 6 of whom were taken inpatient at various locations. 229, really quickly, you'll see a Worcester police officer here. I mean, that illustrates how far and wide we had to rely on mutual aid resources back in 1975. And that's good, but I do encourage you to watch it, and you can see the 70s sideburns and interesting hairstyles. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what have we done thus far, right? So in 1975, what we learned was that all the municipalities really operated in their own silos and developed their own planning. For these events, we have engaged with the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, and we are basically following the model of the Boston Marathon. Boston Marathon is a linear event involving multiple jurisdictions, multiple federal, state, county, and municipal agencies. And frankly, it speaks well of your public safety professionals, our fire chief, police chief, and public works director, that we're really leading on this and engaged heavily with MEMA, and what we have proposed in each of the jurisdictions through our mutual aid agreements have agreed that for the events of 2025, we'll have a unified coordination center at a location to be determined, where a lot of the specialty resources that each municipality may need to draw upon will be staged. So, the fire chief judge will have a technical rescue team staged, and that team can be deployed to any of the jurisdictions throughout the weekend. And that unified coordination center will go operational likely on Thursday before the weekend and go right through until Monday with decision makers in the UCC able to deploy specialty assets should they become necessary. Obviously, the National Park Service, the superintendent, and the chief ranger have been very engaged with our planning. But we want to be clear that while there'll be this sort of multi-jurisdictional unified command, each of the jurisdictions will have its own incident action plan so that we can take care of our business people within our own jurisdiction, our own residents, and our own spectators, and deploy our assets in Concord, independent of Lincoln, Lexington, Arlington. Each community has agreed to this. We have established regional public safety work groups. Again, I won't read them all to you, but intelligence and investigations will be critically important so that as we get closer to the event, we can get constitutionally gathered intelligence and intelligence reports from our federal partners that will help us scale our plan, either up or down, as I mentioned earlier. Public safety communications, we look back at 75, Concord couldn't talk to Lexington on the radio. We have a whole public safety work group on that. We're planning for hazardous weather, sheltering, family reunification, should there be a critical incident or even missing children, right? We want to be able to reunify folks. EOD CBRN is and Chief Judge will correct me here, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive planning. And, unfortunately, we have to plan for any potential threat, right? EMS, mass casualty, public information, I mentioned the UCC, and tactical operations. Next slide, please, Anthony. This is our Gantt chart, our planning chart, just so you all know that, we have deliverables and milestones along our planning. It will, Assistant Fire Chief Latta has really been a leader on training all of the regional and other municipalities on incident command. We had an executive training with a lot of town staff recently. And again, our Concord public safety professionals are really leading on this. Next slide, please. I'm about to get the hook, Anthony. This slide was presented by Jennifer Schuneman at a regional meeting. Just thought it was important. Gary agrees that the FinCom sees, the spike in revenue based on the tourism that we will see and the state will see as we sort of hit that peak of 2025, and 26 we'll have the tall ships in Boston, et cetera. Next slide, please. And then our budget. As I mentioned earlier, we have worked very closely with your department heads and their staff. There's a high degree of confidence in these budget projections. And, whether we like it or not, the crowds are coming, and we need to plan, we need to develop a plan that ensures safety and an event that doesn't feel over-policed, but that is well planned and well capable to respond to any critical incident or threat that comes our way.
Thank you, Fred. Can we just go back to the last slide? I just have one question. So you're asking for 350? Just where's the difference going to come from?
Gary? Gary's going to make up the difference.
Is it the coins that John was showing?
So the difference will come from the funds that the select board and town manager identified would be available for the Concord 250 effort.
Okay.
That was about $700,000. So, what we're looking at is a substantial portion of those dollars plus the requested 350 to address our public safety needs.
Okay, thank you. That was well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me see if folks have questions related to the use of the free cash, et cetera. Let's not get into details of parade planning and anything else, because otherwise we're going to be here all day. So I'm gonna filter the questions. Ask the question first, and then we'll go forward.
I promise it's a money question. What if it isn't enough? What are you going to do? No, if you exceed the 350 budget.
The 350 budget will fund all the resources that we project we will need under the what's known and what's assumed. That second slide.
Yep.
Should we have spectators or incidents that go outside of our resource capabilities, we'll rely heavily on the feds to bring in resources from outside of the Commonwealth.
And I think it might be helpful, at least at town meeting, to talk about 725 and then the 350, because the total cost for public safety is really 725.
Correct.
Right? And let's just be very clear. Done.
Yeah, first, thank you for the presentation, Fred. Two quick questions. Now that the state has allocated 2.2 million or over 2 million, I forgot the exact number, how much of that is going toward safety? And yes, I thought we were not going to have this conversation.
Yeah, so, and I suspect.
Very misleading article.
Yeah, in every mailbox in town, of course, on the March 1 edition of the Concord Bridge, had the headline, and for those of us in the executive committee, it was kind of like a slap on the head, like, oh no. The short answer is, at best, we do not know. Those state dollars will not be available until after July 1st of 2024, and realistically, and this is based on a recent conversation I had with Representative Cataldo, not until late summer. And what we don't know is exactly how those dollars will be used. Some of those will be used at the state level to support the staff that have been hired, and I assume additional marketing and other outreach efforts. Again, back to our earlier point, there's a lot of people who are going to come, even if Concord said forget it. That's all going to, the marketing is well underway. Representative Cataldo, at this point, speculated that that $2 million, if it is available, and any available trickles down to the various communities, that the nature of that, will it be grants? Will it be a competitive grant applications as opposed to direct appropriation? No one knows. So honestly, at this point in time, I need to put a budget together, and I do not count on any of those dollars coming to Concord. If they do, we're all to the good.
Okay.
But
That's
I don't count on it.
Gary, that was economic development money, right?
No, if I may speak, so there's several pots of state dollars that are in play, and as I best understand it, and others in the audience might correct me on this. So, yeah, we talked about the $2 million, but there's also an economic development bond that has been proposed that also includes some monies for for the 250th celebrations. But that's, even if that bond authorization passes, that doesn't necessarily mean the money's available. We don't know when it would be available. And as with most state bond authorizations, the gatekeeper is the State Department of Administration and Finance, right? Because they're going to control the level, the amount of debt that the state will take on to fund those actions. So interesting, but I have seen no guarantee around that. Finally, we are looking at another source of state funding that is in the governor's budget. Again, Representative Cataldo has been very helpful working to try to keep that money in the budget with the anticipated decline of state revenues. You know, there's clearly the expectation that there will be further reductions in spending. But we are working behind the scenes to try to ensure those dollars remain available, and those were specifically for public safety, as I understand it. So of those three sources, that's the one that I guess, if you will, I'm hoping for, but we won't know until the state budget process is finished, which June, July, August, who knows? So again, I can't wait and put a budget together, and I don't think that's in the best interest of Concord to hope and speculate, but
Agreed.
don't count on it.
Okay, and then very quickly, just, I know that the majority of this is labor, but there are some, there's a column on that sheet for equipment, and so the question to the chiefs is, will there be some offset in the 26 budget? Perhaps we're pre-funding some capital equipment some supplies or equipment, and if so, that might be worth mentioning to the taxpayers. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Chris, you have a question?
I do. Yeah, so I'm just trying to reconcile the numbers. So last year, we were talking about a number in total budget of around 2 million. And I think there was some amount taken from free cash last year. Is that correct?
No, I believe
No?
we're looking at the $700,000 that the town manager and the select board allocated. That's it.
Okay. So this 700,000, so that if we give 350 from free cash, the 375, where is it coming from?
That was,
Free cash.
So everything's coming from free cash.
no, they found,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm confused.
Chris, it's Carrie LaFleur. So
Hi.
the $700,000 that is already in the bank, so to speak, 200,000 of that is from a state grant, and 500,000 is from ARPA.
Ah, there we go. Okay. I knew there was money before. Okay. Okay, so 200 and 500, that's 700, and the 350 is on top of that. So it's really about $1 million in total.
Yes.
Yes, but 995.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Not including the memorial.
Yeah, that's,
Just one last question before we let you go. So, Philip, if perchance some of this money comes through and you find that you didn't need all of the money, the 1.03, whatever, 1.025, is there a mechanism just accounting-wise, legally, to send some of it back to the town or no? If the committee ends up with a surplus?
I'm assuming that those town dollars that the town manager just described
Yeah,
would still may be redirected ultimately. Although
Okay.
the ARPA monies, I know there's a calendar deadline, right, on
yeah,
by
to
which
use
time they
it,
have to
sure.
be spent.
Yep,
So my assumption is that there would be some kind of a mechanism internal within the town for that to happen. Now the town manager will tell you the real story.
No, if there's money left over, I think we will use all outside sources first.
like that answer. Okay.
Yeah.
And if what we have allocated, the $200,000 state grant, we would use that first
Okay.
and hold the ARPA for the last.
Yeah, you're
And the
gonna
ARPA
pretend
has
it's
to
not
be,
there.
the ARPA funds have to be committed,
Yep.
so they would be committed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Oh,
you
wait a
all.
minute, hold on.
Another question?
Whose hand is up there? Is that Terry?
It is.
Terry?
Thanks for the presentation. A very quick comment on, at the public hearing and at town meeting, I would suggest that you have a slide at the end just showing, 200,000 from the state grant, 500 from ARPA, and now your request is 300 and whatever from free cash, and here's your total. I think it would clear up a lot of questions to have that one slide.
Yep. All right, thank you. Any other members of the public wish to opine? Nobody wishes to opine. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you all very much.
Where are the, well, we'll ask later. a lot of questions. All right, Dean, you're up. Dean, you are up.
Good evening, Dean Banfield, 73 Walden Terrace. I am the chair of the Solar Implementation Task Force. Next slide. So the task force has two things to do. One is to create a plan that gets us to our climate action plan goal of 20 megawatts of solar within the community by 2030. And a secondary request from the select board is that we come up with some site or multiple sites that we can show some progress, because we haven't built any solar since 2014. So next slide. So I'm just going to be talking tonight about the progress we're trying to make this year. I'll have a few slides on the report status for the hearing and the town meeting. We started with 3 high potential solar sites. We met in August, and between August and October, we sort of surveyed the entire town and what opportunities that town land provided. We came up with 3 places that it could go that would be relatively straightforward. At least we thought so. We also felt that a large-scale battery was a key component of any of this. Today, 60% of solar implementations include an aligned battery storage system. This allows for power to be stored while the sun is shining and then deployed and what's called dispatched when people are using it. They get home, they turn on their lights, they turn on their stove, or in the summer they turn on their air conditioner. And the sun has started to go down, so you can deploy a battery to try to help with that. But one of the things that's important about that is that the peak usage is being served by clean resources, by energy that was collected from the sun and then dispatched later when the sun's not shining, but you're still using a renewable resource. And the state of Massachusetts has created a whole framework for that. It's called the Clean Peak Standard, and we can participate in that framework if we have battery storage. So the other piece of that, well, before you go forward, there's one other piece of the puzzle that the Solar Implementation Task Force decided was kind of a critical item, and that is that as the light plant begins to add more of these distributed energy assets, try to borrow the term from the previous presentation, assets, we would need some sort of control system, something that the light plant does not currently possess. And so we tailored this article to include some control software and hardware that would help them manage these things, which CMS is supposed to come on in the next year. There's a battery and a very large-scale solar site there, and we were proposing more. So next slide. These are the sites that we anticipated building. We initially looked at just 2, which was a ground mount system on the landfill and another one right across from the Beatty. If you've ever been on the Loop Road in the high school and you're standing at the Beatty and you look across to the high school, between the Beatty and the parking lot for the high school, there's a very large space, which is an engineered area that just basically collects water that runs off the parking lot, runs off the building, and creates a large pool of water. If you build some solar on top of that, the water will still collect, but we'll have some solar energy. When we proposed that to the high school, they said, nah, maybe not. How about the roof of the building? We'd much prefer that. So we added that to the warrant article that we had proposed. So can you go to the next slide? This was the original cost structure, which shows the three different arrays that we intended to propose, also the control and monitoring and the battery. To price the battery, we used a Tesla-based price, and the light plant requested that we add about 30% to that in this article here. This original proposal, that was the Tesla battery up by 30% because of all of the engineering and other work that the light plant would have to do to integrate it. So we ended up at a $9.2 million number with a little contingency there, and if we go to the next slide, you'll see where we're coming along. The Solar Implementation Task Force will not be building any solar this year. We pushed and pushed. First, the school were not interested in seeing solar in that drainage catchment area at all, so that went off the list. The other two, we pushed to get feasibility studies done so that all we had when we made our original estimates was GIS pictures that were done in 2020 by a company called Cadmus. They estimated how many panels could go in these places and where they might go, say on the roof of the high school. And we had an estimate from a company called Kearsarge for what might happen over at the landfill, but we had no actual person look at the building structural design documents or get up on the roof to see what the characteristics of the roof membrane were or how much mechanical stuff we would have to avoid. So we need actual feasibility studies, and they have not even been undertaken at this point. We just haven't been able to push hard enough to get these things done. So we don't have any solar in the article, but we still feel that the battery purchase and installation will be very helpful because it helps us participate in that Clean Peak standard. We can cache energy that we receive overnight at inexpensive prices, and we can deploy it later during the day when the price of purchasing energy from the grid is more expensive. The main way, however, that a battery will benefit the light plant is by cost avoidance. One of the biggest charges that the light plant has is fees from the wider grid for transmitting energy to us. They have to maintain the wide area transmission network, and when that gets stressed, everybody who's receiving energy has to pay an assessment. And if we don't stress it as much, because we have a battery inside our little distribution area, we don't pull as much from the wider grid, we don't stress it as much, we are not assessed as much. And that's the major financial benefit of a battery at this point for us. The light plant, in conversation with the light plant, they were not ready to really work directly on a management and control system yet. They are actively working on a data collection system, and that system is a precursor to a control system. So they need to be able to know what energy is flowing in what parts of their network much more precisely than they can today. They're currently deploying special meters in everybody's house. So these advanced, what's called their advanced metering project will get very good data directly from people's homes. So that's one piece of detailed real-time data that they're going to be getting, but that deployment is underway. They've deployed about 1,900 meters so far in that project, and it's an ongoing thing that's going to go on for the next year. So they're not quite ready for the management and control system that we were proposing, but what they did say was, if we can understand and work out what kinds of data needs to be available for us to do this control and management, we can do things in parallel and make sure that we're getting the right stuff, so when it's time to go, we have it and we don't have to go back and redo. So we'll do some preliminary funding for that. Anyway, the final motion, if we go to the next slide, the final motion is a greatly reduced ask. The battery cost has come down a little bit. I only upped the number by 25%. It's because in looking at the detail about what was included in the Tesla delivery, 25% seemed like a good number to increase by. If you see what happened to control and monitoring, we're not purchasing hardware anymore. We're just really doing some preliminary work. So that's been greatly reduced, and the total ask goes down to $3 million. Okay, next slide. So what's the funding model? This is not a taxpayer-funded thing. The debt service will run off of the light plant's budget. So it's internal to the light plant's budget and the rate structure that the light plant ratepayer pays for. It's not on the books of the town, although the town is the final backstop because the town is the actual issuer of the debt. The way the article text reads, the first choice place where that funds are going to come from is going to come from the light plant. So the light plant will be retiring the debt. There are some numbers here that show what we expect to see from the Investment Recovery Act, 25.5% grant, and the interest rate is actually quite conservative at 4%. I think we could probably do better. What do you think, Anthony, maybe?
I think hopefully we can, yes.
Okay, so hopefully we can do better. So we're kind of looking at 4% in the modeling that we've done. If we go to the next slide, that's what a battery looks like. Next slide. And this is what the cash flow to the light plant would be for having the battery. It is positive the entire time. The break even is 11 years. And for the ratepayer, if you go to the next slide, it's the exact same profile, but this is what the ratepayer, the scale on the left changes to show what the ratepayer savings would be each year. And it starts in the first year. We would probably have a bond anticipation note for the full amount in the first year. So you have a small number there because we're paying bust-out retail for everything. But then we get our Investment Recovery Act money, and that clocks in year 2. We issue the 15-year note. At that point, now we're into the long-term bond, but everything goes up because we've gotten a 25% underwriting from the federal government. So the ratepayer is benefited. The light plant has an asset that it will be able to use to offset some of the assessments that it gets from the wider grid. That's the major source of revenue that this thing generates. That's pretty much it. I don't think I have anything beyond that. Maybe one more is the article text.
Lois.
Questions?
Dean, just one editorial comment.
Yeah.
This slide that says ratepayer impact,
Yeah.
in big letters, if it said ratepayer savings in big
Okay, well, it's positive impact, but okay, that's fine. I think that's good.
Yeah, because people are used to seeing things go up because costs are
They're
going up.
They're going the wrong way. Yeah, exactly. Okay, fine. Fair enough.
So I think that could make a real difference in the presentation and
Fine.
the reaction.
Good suggestion.
You might want to start with that one. In all seriousness.
Okay. Fair enough.
And just a question, because I'm curious about it. What were the objections that the school had to using the open field? I don't know what amount of output there was going to be from the various proposed locations, but the ground mount solar at CCHS was pretty inexpensive.
Yeah.
So what was the problem?
The ground mount solar and the roof mount solar at CCHS are approximately the same output. So the fact that you see those two different numbers it's significant. We proposed the ground mount initially. There are a number of objections raised, but some of them are literally just visual. We don't want to see this here. To a degree, there's been some concern that that space is, quote, one of the large remaining spaces on the campus, and maybe we can do something else with that space. But it's an engineered drainage area, and you have to find some place for the water to go. So I don't really know what that
So did the pushback come from school administration or the school committee?
Yes.
Both?
Both. Well, the school administration with support from the school committee, yeah.
And so the idea's been abandoned now?
The idea has not been abandoned by the Solar Implementation Task Force.
Good to hear.
It will remain on our list.
Good, okay, good to hear. Okay,
But I do like the concept of going and doing feasibility.
Yeah.
So the question is, you're doing feasibility on, why not do feasibility on all 3 sites?
At the moment, it doesn't make sense. Well, let's back up a little bit. The feasibility, those feasibility studies will be done, because the light board has approved funding for the light plant to do the feasibility. So they're going to do them, they just haven't been engaged, and we don't have
For
it,
all
so we
three
can't come to the
sites,
meeting.
for all three sites?
Yeah. No, only for two. Doing anything on the campus involves agreement from the school committee, and if they don't agree, you don't get to go in there and do a feasibility study. So it requires them to agree, and they don't want it there.
Would encourage additional,
It's a regional committee, it's
Yep.
it's like the Vatican,
Yep.
and they get to have their own government. and
would encourage additional conversations with the Vatican.
We have been working with them.
Yep.
Yep.
Carlin,
So-
and then Suresh, and then Don.
Yep.
Dean, let me make sure I understand. Has the light board voted to approve or voted for recommend affirmative action on your revised article?
No, they haven't had an opportunity to do that.
When will they do that?
Well, the last time I was at the light board, we were still quite hopeful that we'd get the roof feasibility done, and we were kind of far away on the landfill. It's a very challenging site. There's a lot of slope, there's a lot of, the CAP has its own engineering, and we need a very specialized vendor to figure out that feasibility. So that was kind of up in the air. So what I gave the light board at that last meeting was, okay, it's a range. It'll go between 4.5 million, because we were going to include the roof at that time, up to like, I want to say 6 million or 7, whatever adding the landfill would be, because the basin was off the table. And that, they showed, they had some sort of motion that said, this looks good. This looks fine to us, but it was not approving of it because we haven't brought the final to them. I expect to bring the final to them between now and town meeting. to get
Okay,
their thing.
that would be my recommendation.
Yeah,
Thank you,
yeah.
that's it.
Yep.
Suresh, Don, and then we'll go to Zoom.
So, two quick questions. One is the life of the battery pack that you know.
The Tesla guarantee is 20 years,
20
but
years.
that's, I'll say there's a caveat there. It's like a set of tires on your car. There's a wear factor. Batteries will degrade the more you use them and cycle them. We're anticipating 1.5% a year, so at the 10-year point, the thing would only be 85% capable of what its initial capacity was.
Okay.
I've identified a relatively modest number of cycles per year that we would expect to use the thing for, and that should extend the life. And with a guarantee that someone like Tesla would offer that's that long, it would mean that as individual cells are sort of truly failed, they would go in and plug in a new cell. I don't really know exactly how their guarantee works, but that is, my industry standard is these things last somewhere in the 10 to 12-year range. They do not last 20, but Tesla wants to put their name on it, that's fine, that's good.
So the savings that we are looking at projected over 20 years, that means there will be more capitalization for the batteries somewhere in between, in 10, 12, 15 years. There will be some more, asked from the town or from the board.
The curve of utility degrades to the point where maybe at the 20-year point, you're got about 60%, it's like 60% as capable as it was when you bought it. I mean, I don't really know the full picture there because you can look up, you can read a lot of technical papers on why things degrade and how.
Question.
Dean, thanks very much. A couple of quick questions. Can you include an ROI?
I can.
Okay.
The NPV for this thing is like $379,000.
Okay.
So
I was going to suggest also an NPV for each of the solar sites. I mean, or an ROI on the solar sites.
We can do
so
that.
So we can show the difference between doing it on a roof versus doing it on the ground.
Yeah, to be clear, for the hearing deck that I provided, which you may or may not have seen yet, I do have some numbers in there that just show the significant distinction between doing it on the ground mount and doing it on a roof.
That would be
It's
really
not,
helpful.
it's
Yeah,
not nothing.
yeah, if we could show the ROI, that'd be
Yeah.
helpful.
Yep.
Second, you only have 100,000 toward the controls of a 600,000,
Yeah.
right? And is that full budget required in order to get the benefit of the batteries? And if so, what about the rest of the
There's
funding?
the light plant anticipates an outsourced service provider who can connect to the battery and execute remotely some of these things as a service. It's like a, software as a service type of model, as opposed to them having their own in-house hardware and software that then can control when to do things with the solar and when to do this and when to do that. And so the outsourced service is literally just to control a battery. It's not going to be helping them manage
Yeah.
the internals of how solar's flowing on their network, et cetera. It's just to discharge or charge as necessary.
So they're really separate issues then?
It's sort of a separate service, but it'll allow them to take advantage of the battery and get the financial benefit, because that will be a targeted service to get those financial benefits out of the battery in the interim before they get the in-house system up and running.
Okay, and then lastly, where was the third solar site and why did you drop that?
So the 3 sites, one of the sites that was dropped is the one across the street from the Beatty Center. That one's totally been dropped.
Right.
Okay.
The
The other
roof.
site is on the old landfill across Route 2.
Okay,
Has room, we believe, for about 1.5 megawatts of additional capacity, but a lot of it's rolling and sloped, and the cap is, X amount of clay and other
Was that
layers.
the?
So it's a
Oh,
technical
I'm sorry,
issue.
we've got more questions, so.
Okay,
thanks.
Let's,
Yep.
Peggy and then Greg. And Chris, and then Greg.
Just very briefly, has the moderator signed off on the change to this article? The article's entitled Town Solar Expansion, and now it is just a battery, no solar at all.
I did communicate with the moderator. I didn't get any indication from her that this change of scope was problematic. I did say, well, look, this is going to be a solar article with no solar, and I did give her an indication of the changes in the language. There were some changes that I wanted to make that she thought were out of scope, but the changes that take the things out of it are certainly within scope, and reducing the money is also within scope, so.
Okay.
I didn't get any
I think that's a yes, Peggy.
So I think the answer is yes.
Other questions? Chris, and then we'll go to Greg.
Okay, thank you. Dina, I'm a little bit confused. So it sounds like you had a much larger project envisioned.
Yep.
Now we're just going to do a battery, but the battery was a component of this other plan.
Yes.
So how does having a battery by itself do anything?
Okay. Let's see how I can characterize this. On the peak hot summer day, when the New England grid is.
No, I have that part. I'm
Okay.
trying to say, if I'm the light plant.
Yes.
And I'm not having new solar sites, what are they gonna do with a battery that's not hooked up to anything? Can they use this battery now
They-
for our existing
They-
solar?
They will charge the battery with inexpensive energy overnight when the grid is very low and not producing a ton. And then, when the grid is absolutely peaked and, needs to bring on the most inefficient gas plant somewhere where they have to fire it up, they can release the energy and reduce our requirement to draw energy
From
off the
our
grid.
existing
Buy
solar.
cheap, store it.
It has nothing to do with solar at that point. It's independent. It's independent.
Is it?
Hold on.
I don't understand.
So here's the thing, Chris, it's very easy. Right now, if there was a battery installed right now, the battery would be charging right now, using regular whatever mechanism, whatever electricity the solar plant gets. From now
Okay, so
until.
it's just a peak rate play? It's
Exactly,
just-
that's
it's
exactly what it
arbitrage.
is.
It is a peak
just
rate.
That is
arbitrage.
it's arbitrage, that's exactly it.
It's more than
Got
just,
it.
it's more than just a peak rate play. It is a peak capacity play. In other words, when the grid is just stressed, we are assessed money for that stress. And
Okay.
if we can reduce the amount that we stress the grid, then the stress on the grid gets allocated to everybody else. And
Okay.
we avoid costs, really
Okay.
avoid costs.
I've got it. So it sounds like
Kathy-
it's a good financial idea.
Yes.
That's what
Financial
this
idea.
is a financial
Yeah.
arbitrage idea.
Yeah.
And the chart that you showed is simply for the battery, the benefits.
That's the
to
benefit of the battery. There's no
just
solar in
the
that
battery.
chart. Yep.
No solar, okay.
So,
I got it.
Kathy, hold on one second. Greg has been patiently waiting, and then we're going to come back to you, Kathy. Go ahead, Greg.
So if I patiently wait, I get all my questions answered. except
Well,
for
wait a minute. One question per patient.
I assume the battery's going to be at the light plant, right? Is there?
Into the microphone, Greg.
Sorry, I assume the battery is going to
That
be
is
at
a
the light
very,
plant?
that is a very good question, Greg. We anticipated, since we were putting solar at different sites, that it would go and sit next to this solar, okay? Since we're not, at least in this proposed article, putting solar at these two sites, I communicated with the moderator and said, well, can we just put it anywhere? And she goes, that is out of scope. You've already identified 2 locations. You either put it at either of those 2 locations or you don't. So we have to do what we have to do. If we order it and it's coming in, 1Q, 2Q 25, and we have another meeting between now and then, we can have a corrective article if they really want to put it in another location.
So today it would be either at the high
It
school
would be the high school,
or
it would highly likely be like right near the compost area.
Or,
over there.
Okay.
I
Over
assume
the
the question
landfill.
wasn't so
No, it
simple.
wasn't. No, it was a perfectly good question.
That was it. All right,
Yeah.
Kathy.
2 questions. The first one is, with regard to the battery and storage, we already have within the town a reasonable amount of solar production, which is just going back out on the grid. Is there any way to capture that?
Okay, so the solar energy that's produced within the town, I'll give you some numbers. We have, that is controlled by the light plant is approximately 7.5 megawatts of capacity. And on private homes, it's about 4 megawatts of capacity. So that's a pretty healthy amount. It is not actually going out onto the grid. It is staying within the light plant's fence line. The light plant substation is incapable of pushing energy the other direction. So it stays within our light plant, and the light plant then charges retail rates for that energy.
Okay, and then my second question is, I assume that this is just the beginning of your project and you will continue on to, in the future year, to build out more solar?
The Solar Implementation Task Force was set up to create a plan so that the light plant can get to 20 megawatts by 2030. But then, once we're done with our plan, the task force goes poof. So we may continue to keep pushing this along. It seems like a useful thing to have a committee pushing forward. But if we finish this article and then finish our report, we'll have to see what happens with this committee, because it's really just a task force to get the town set up for success, and then we just sort of evaporate.
Lois had a question, and then Dee, and then I'm going to call it a night because really,
Numbers are
2 more
pretty
questions.
simple.
Yeah, this is because there's going to be plenty of time the next year for you guys to dig into this. So let's just stick to the question for the warrant article, please.
So, does the battery have, assuming solar is subsequently added
Yeah.
to the system, we get additional solar, is the battery useful for that process?
The main financial benefit is realized immediately and doesn't have anything to do with solar.
Okay.
It does produce a potential for this, what we'll call peak shifting, where solar is, one of the primary things that batteries can do for the light plant right now is they can protect our network. And the reason that the network needs protecting is because of what I just said. We cannot push energy back out to the wider grid. So if everybody's rooftop in the community is producing on a very sunny day in April or in March, in April, let's say it's April vacation, and everybody's vacated for the April school vacation, and everybody's rooftop is producing solar, and all the big arrays that the light plant owns are producing solar, we may have more energy floating around in Concord than is being used. And that could cause a huge blackout. So a battery could then soak that up.
So the answer is yes.
And protect.
Okay, the answer is yes. D, very quick question in 2 minutes
Very
answer,
quick
because we're going
Doesn't have to
way
do
over
with
time.
finance. I'm answering a lot of questions
Yeah,
about that.
it's only about the article.
I'm looking, it is only about Article 33.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if this is being proposed for the light plant, why isn't the light plant and not the task force? Why isn't the light plant presenting this article?
We had that conversation with the select board quite a while ago. I want to say that was back in December. And there was a good, healthy debate among the select board members, and they felt that it was perfectly within the purview of any town committee to bring an article. So we're bringing this, that's all.
All right,
But you will not be the beneficiary if it passes, is that
The light
correct?
plant will be-
The light plant,
The
right?
light plant will be the beneficiary of it, yeah, which is a
Okay.
town enterprise.
yeah, we got it.
enterprise.
Yep, we understand, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dean. Come back next year as many times as you want.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys, come on up. Before you get started, let's keep the answers brief, and I am going to rule questions out of order. I let the 250 committee go because it hadn't been up here, and it was important. The next set of topics are going to be revisited over and over again for the next 10 years. So keep the questions and the answers brief and on point. Otherwise, I'm just going to interrupt. Go ahead, Alan.
Very good, thank you. Alan Cathcart, Director of Concord Public Works. I have with me Sal Ybarra, who's the one of the town engineers, public works engineers. In essence, we're talking about a stormwater utility, the creation of a stormwater utility fund. We've had a lot of outreach going into fall meetings for public meetings. We've gone to the NRC, we've gone to the sustainability group, we've talked to the business partnership. We've been encouraged through our Public Works Commission to sort of get this word out. It's a new concept for the town of Concord. The idea is that stormwater, which is basically rain and snow that falls, onto the ground, has to be managed. It has to be managed for the benefit of the community and just sort of keeping ponds and puddles and water, flowing to rivers and streams in as untainted a way as possible. It includes a volume and capacity component. It also includes quality. It is becoming a regulated water resource through the NIPDES program, much like the wastewater or sanitary waste. This is, relatively new over the last 20 years. It's been evolving and becoming increasingly more of a need and a lot of attention from environmental impacts as well as community needs, and it does dovetail with a lot of climate interests and concerns. With that said, we are looking at about 20 other municipalities in the Commonwealth who have preceded the development of one of these utilities. So we're still sort of in the front of the pack, but we're certainly not leading. And the reason these other communities have established these funds are because we're realizing that we have significant assets in place. These are stormwater systems that have been installed without long-term consideration of the maintenance, repair or replacement, or even improvements or expansion of these. And so that's the backdrop, and it's very important to understand that is what stormwater is. It's just how we manage this in a way that works for our communities. Working with the Public Works Commission, we've identified a goal of having a two-phase process of establishing a fund and a framework through a bylaw. There's been discussion as far as how to do this. Some communities simply just have an enabling legislation to have this fund. Others have established detailed bylaws that go with them. And the bylaw is what we've been spending a lot of time on over the last several months to help the community understand what's the framework. But I want to be very clear, what we're going for at this town meeting is simply the establishment of a fund in accordance to the enterprise concepts of Massachusetts, and a framework in accordance to Town of Concord governance and process. With that said, we provided in the packet information for you to read. It's the same information we're sharing with the community broadly, and I do regret we didn't have a presentation because I like the input that this committee has had, and it would have, if we had had something to show, that may have been helpful. I'm sorry we didn't actually have that together for you tonight. So I don't know if you would want us to talk about the bylaw, if you want to ask questions.
No, all right, let me,
Please.
all the information's in there. It's heavy. I do not want a discussion around what type of user fee structure you're thinking about, because there's going to be plenty of time for that. So questions around the establishment of the fund, what it means, implications, is all we're looking at today. There's going to be a lot of time for all the details through the course of the year.
Thanks. What are the implications of this bylaw to the town's budget from assessment on town-owned lands?
Sure. Solomon Ibarra, stormwater engineer for the town. It depends on what the rate will be, and that's something the PwC will look over for the next year. Again, like Alan said, we're not looking to receive any funds in the Stormwater Enterprise Fund this year. That will happen, and we'll present another article next year with the budget and in 2025. And so we're not sure what the implications would be for the town, but we do know that about 8% of the town's impervious area is owned by the town itself.
Great. Any other questions? On point. Perfect. Simple article, very few questions. Thank you. Next up. Claim it back. What they've been doing, we had a conversation with this with.
This happened before?
No, but before, for prep for hearing, I had a conversation with Kari, Anthony, and Eric was on too, about what we can and can't do. So if I call for public comment and they say something, I say 1 minute and you have to let them talk, period. But if they're out of order, which is what they were, I can kick them out. So what I want to do right now is basically go in, make sure that they haven't truly hacked us, because what's been typically happening is that they've been Zoom bombing, not necessarily hacking.
Sure.
That's what's been
They
going on.
they don't need to hack.
They don't need to hack the way things are set up.
Can you do 15 seconds and then grant additional time if you see it's a legitimate person?
Let's see what happens. If I can leave them out totally, because they've already violated process, that would be my preference.
And MMN will edit this portion out of the video.
That's beyond me. I don't know whether
I'm
Kari
telling you,
does
that's
it.
what they do. It's
Oh,
had
that's
the
fine.
Transportation Advisory Committee.
That's
what they
fine.
did.
I saw a strange number up there. I saw a person with 6 numbers up there, and I was wondering whether that was going to happen.
He's trying to figure out if he can prevent individual participants from joining.
Well, they can join. I just don't want them to say anything or be able to present. That's what we have to do. If they want to listen in,
Public.
right?
It's public.
It's public, exactly.
Well, could they still take over the screen?
No.
Even if
So-
they're silent?
Hold on. Sorry?
I had the recording.
No, I'm not worried about that. So here's what I'd like to do, if it's possible. Before we go in, I want to make sure that either you or Anthony are the only ones that can share screen.
Sure.
Is that possible?
I can, so Anthony probably can do that.
Okay.
I can do it on my end.
You can or cannot?
I don't do that now. I just only make sure that it's full screen or not full screen.
Okay, so where did Anthony go?
I think he went out to figure it out.
The host.
Somebody has a swastika for their picture.
Sorry?
The host, a couple of those people had.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I think it's appropriate to try to ban or prevent individuals from coming in. I know it's
I don't think we can do
that.
You can't do that, that's public, right? Public meeting, that you can't share.
Swastikas. It's
The
swastikas.
same thing if they walk in with a swastika.
It's swastikas. It's swastikas.
I get
Lois, I'm with you on this, but fortunately or unfortunately, we have these laws on freedom of speech and the ability, this is a Massachusetts Supreme Court ruling that happened last year. That's what we're trying to balance. Whether we agree or disagree with the ruling, it is what it is.
That had to do with civility. That didn't
This,
have to
but
do with
this, I'll show you what.
committing hate speech.
I understand, well, this is the fine line I was told I had to walk. That we have to let them say what they say. I can only kick them out if they're violating order. So they're violating order, so I'm more than happy to kick them out, but I can't not let them in if they're just gonna sit there. That's why I want to control what they can share. They shouldn't share anything. And then I want to be able to kill them after 30 seconds or a minute, because then they're going beyond and violating. That's what we need to do. Unfortunately, if I go open it up for public comment, I have to let them talk. And on that last one, I didn't even open it up for public comment.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So I could just mute them all and only unmute one at a time and then cut them off.
What else are we doing?
Yeah, he's talking to somebody.
And these guys are still at it here.
Is he's not still broadcasting?
Yes, he is. He's still broadcasting.
Yeah, say it again.
So Anthony, we have to kill it. He's got to kill the meeting, because otherwise I can't share while the other person's sharing.
You said 8 percent of impervious surface is owned by the town?
The town, municipal land.
Okay, what's the implication?
How did you do it?
I believe it's to determine if fees are set, who and how are they going to be set? And do they apply to municipal property?
Okay.
The intent is yes.
Yeah,
And that's sort of I think the gist of the question.
okay.
And, the basis would be equity across the board based on a percent of impervious cover.
So you go into it,
Thank you.
go to participants. Yeah, go into participants and then hit remove.
So who on your staff is going to participate in the MCI stuff?
We were there today.
You were there today?
Mhm.
Okay.
They let me out.
Anthony.
Meeting.
Anthony,
I'm gonna have,
they've actually hacked your computer.
one's gone, yeah.
Thank you, that's what I said.
Yeah.
It was not just a Zoom participant comment.
It's a hack.
Yeah,
Who's this person right here? No, that might be Liz. Sorry, this is Liz.
I'm not,
Liz is in your account. Okay, that's it. So Liz is in your account.
She's kicking them up.
This is the person I saw before.
These two are obviously.
Yeah, those are all, yeah.
Yeah.
And she needs to be gone too.
And probably that one?
Yeah, definitely this one too.
Who's the target?
Okay. We've stopped the share, that's good. Let's get Mitzi out of there. Okay. Hold on, there's more. They got,
She's kicking them out. Tell me
but she
now.
started, they were able to share the screen again.
She's booting them up.
But somebody's sharing a screen, so, oh, the last one,
You gotta
okay.
Stop them from sharing. Stop sharing.
Have them, yeah, she's got a,
You gotta somehow control who shares.
right. And you can do that in regular Zoom settings.
What is it? Can you only change that on the meeting start? Yeah, I think you can.
No,
Anytime.
you can do it anytime.
Turn it off anytime, but she's.
You can change a webinar meeting, no, you can change a regular meeting into a webinar meeting.
No, you can prevent other participants from sharing. On a regular Zoom meeting, in the middle of the call, you can prevent other people from sharing.
Right now?
The-
You sure you can prevent them or just stop them?
Prevent it.
You can say.
Because-
"Welcome back."
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you can say only the host can share.
It's a very common,
I don't use it that much.
No, I'm telling you, 444-948.
on Zoom.
There's one more person to kick out. Perfect.
Number 4.
They're done. Now, here's the thing. In the Zoom settings, she should be able to control whether participants can share.
Other platform.
And who's Jason Bulger?
He's us. He's your guy, man. Don't kick him out. All right, so you got
and don't kick him out, he's a good
There's a lot of money, you should know who he is.
He's bobbing his head out.
Hold on.
Jason needs to.
Yes, everybody except you and Jason are out. Even I'm out, so that, no, actually, no, I'm not out.
I told her to kick everybody out. Except
How come except me?
she knows you.
Okay.
Yeah, she knows me.
Are you on, Carlin, or no? Okay.
Let me know when I can log in.
Yeah,
'cause I'm not
just-
the host, so.
Yeah, that's okay, just hold on one second.
Yeah, I'm ready whenever you are.
Who's in control? Liz is, right? So in Zoom, there should be a setting for her to control whether participants can share screen.
And then you can stop sharing. Stop sharing screen. All opposed.
I think that happened once.
No, not with Public Works.
That's right.
I've been in a meeting where it happened, but,
Yeah. All right, did you hit stop sharing?
Yeah.
but I
All right, so
understand
she
that.
did stop sharing.
She stopped everybody else from sharing, right? And is there a way for her to mute everybody and only turn them on on her end?
You turn them on. I don't think there is another way.
They're,
You know,
yeah, so this is where,
it made sense though that if there was a webinar where you promote
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
let people in.
We
and-
used to mute all, but does it
Yeah, I would think-
allow you to let them, all right, so you mute it all?
I think so too. I think this year it's different. You're right. and I know that,
So let's try to
I
find
get
out
let
again.
into the school committee
Right.
meetings.
And then if it starts again,
You'll be wondering what's going on, but this.
The host has to accept it.
Actually, before, when we did.
They're all up, right?
Sorry?
you have the control.
That's right, that's right. You can watch, right,
You weren't on. you
That's
didn't
right.
see an email.
right, that's right.
But now you see everybody.
I see, yeah, yeah. And I think that's the way it is with the school committee meetings.
Anthony?
Is Webinar style or this style?
We don't need a
Is webinar?
Webinar stuff.
No, but here's the thing to do. To prevent this for sure, have the agenda up. So as long as you're sharing, nobody else can share. So put the agenda up. You guys don't need a visual, just leave the agenda up and and only unmute folks when I ask.
Parasha, the school committee meetings, the host has to let you in.
Right, that's webinar version.
Even though it's a public meeting, the host lets you in.
It's a waiting room, that's all.
So why don't we do that?
That's how it used to
But-
be here.
Yeah,
But here's the
so it
thing.
used to be here.
That's how it used to be here.
But that won't prevent this kind of thing, and that's what I'm trying to prevent.
Yeah, because.
No, it
Because you can
does.
still talk. You can still talk.
No, you have to promote them to
No,
talk. This is what we used
Yeah.
on the
to do.
school committee
That's what we
meetings?
used to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
They mute you.
Right.
Why aren't we doing that?
The school does a waiting room.
But why did we convert to this?
Because the webinar,
Okay.
is a different license. It's more expensive.
okay,
People
that
are
makes-
used
We'll
to-
figure, let's not figure this out right now, but right now, we've got a kludgy way to control this. This is all right,
Still a public meeting?
yeah, it
We
is
keep the
now a
whole
public
public
meeting.
out? Well, but
Kathy.
is anybody in
Okay.
touch with the other members of the committee to tell them to log back in?
So, I'm sorry, Carlin, did you do that to Chris and others?
Chris and to Peggy
And Kathy? Okay, thank you.
And are we being recorded now?
I think we must be.
You didn't tell them to
We have to
start.
tell, he said to tell him.
No, Carrie did.
Recording.
We started? It says recording.
Okay.
No, but there's no Minuteman in there. Doesn't Minuteman have to be in?
They are. Yeah, they are. Okay. So, oh, you know the other person to send it to is
Chris, Peggy, and
Betsy Levinson from the Concord Bridge.
Kathy was.
And
Kathy.
also, Terry Ackerman was on.
Yeah, ask Terry and Betsy Levinson, Terry Ackerman, and Linda was on too, actually. We'll just give them 5 minutes. And this is eating away into my basketball.
They playing tonight?
Well, yeah, the tournament's all started. Well, I'll wait for an interesting Thursday night. Linda Escobedo was there.
Well, while we're waiting, I'd like to make a comment and an announcement.
If it's official, just hold on one second, please.
It's not official.
Oh, okay, then go ahead.
It's
You're having a party.
No, it's about minutes, and in the future, if you have correction to the minutes, would you email them to me? We will be able to cut down on the time that we spend on that and sorting through everything. So with regards to the minutes that are in today's packet, would you please, if you have any additional comments, would you please get them to me, hopefully by Saturday, so that this can be turned around and you'll have the amendments at next Tuesday's meeting, which is the 19th.
Can we send minutes out?
14th.
Can we send minutes out not as part of the packet, so that we can see them and approve them today? Like, I don't know if you had this done 5 days ago,
There are 2 sets in today's.
No, but like, they're in this packet, right?
Yeah.
But can you send them
Okay.
out 5 days prior so we can give you feedback and then you get them in the packet with all the comments?
We could try to do that. It just,
Let's go
right now,
back.
the timing is a little tricky.
Okay, so we've got,
Oh, yeah, that's true.
When they're
Yeah.
once a month, that's one thing.
Yeah, that's true.
let's go back. We've got the
Good
paper,
idea, though.
we've got the paper of record back online, and we've got Chris Reynolds back online, and we've emailed and sent Kathy a message as well to get back online. So for those in the public that may or may not be watching on Minuteman, we apologize for the disruption. We had a few technical difficulties, and the folks that had disrupted the meeting and did not follow the proper form and process for the meeting have been kicked out. To the extent that anyone else does similar behavior, has similar behavior, we will do the same. Folks in the audience should only speak when I call on them in the process of public comment, and if you disrupt the meeting again in person or on Zoom, we will kick you out. So, having said that, let's go to the next article.
Okay, very good. We're going to discuss Article 17, and that's a borrowing authorization request for $50 million. It's a very big number. The request is,
Excuse me, Anthony, can you just scroll up to 16 or 17? Liz, if you can scroll up there, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, keep going.
And I also just want to introduce Jeff Morofsky, who's our water sewer superintendent, who's responsible for the management of the assets we'll be talking about. With that said, we are looking at the borrowing to allow us to continue and proceed with the final design and construction of the Nagog Pond water treatment facility. I regret to say this has been a saga as far as schedule and time and challenges, both regulatorily, geopolitically. We've had litigation with neighboring communities over water rights, and evolving and changing regulations. In this particular case, as we were preparing to complete the final design to relocate the facility down to share the property at the municipal light plant, we learned of a new contaminant of interest, and this is PFAS, polyfluorinated alkaline substance, which has really been a remarkable development as far as a regulatory process of a water quality standard that has been fast-tracked in a way that has caught the entire industry, the water industry, not just by surprise, but the speed of regulatory assessment and trying to establish a standard has been unprecedented. And we are finding that PFAS, it is ubiquitous. It is detectable at incredibly low levels. We're talking parts per trillion. This is something, you know, a new level of contamination analytical techniques. And we're finding that a lot of supplies, like Concord, where small groundwater supplies, surface water supplies, are looking at levels that, well, just a few years ago were compliant, are now being faced with meeting new standards. These are Safe Drinking Water Act standards, which really are not an option, they're a requirement. And the schedule and fast track of going to develop a standard moved from a advisory of 70 parts per trillion only a few years ago to a standard in the state of Massachusetts, which was unique and different than 50 other states, for 20 parts per trillion, to now we're looking at a process where EPA is looking to establish a standard of 4 parts per trillion. All of our waters, including the stormwater we just talked about, has some level of PFAS. The question is to what degree. A drop in a bucket is a part per million. A drop in a swimming pool would be 1 part per trillion. And it's incredible as far as we're now challenged with looking at water treatment expansion of the NAGOG facility to include PFAS removal. And we're also looking at, we have 6 groundwater supplies, all have different levels of PFAS, but we have a couple that are just at or above the standard of 4. So we are planning to expedite the design and construction of treatment at those facilities. That's the Hugh Cargill well and the 2nd Division well. All of our supplies are important. The costs for each of the groundwater supplies, we're looking at somewhere between $5 and $10 million. We have been informed that PFAS is really, the standard is based on limit of detection. And there's a concern, and we just need to have our eyes on the fact that all of our facilities may require treatment at some point. It just seems to be where we're headed. Our 10-year plan is really to establish and complete NAGOG Pond, which is a very expensive surface water treatment facility to the tune of about $35 million, and proceed with design and construction for PFAS removal at Hugh Cargill and 2nd Division. I think that's the overarching issue. It's not really an option. It's a standard that we may have. We're waiting for the final promulgation to determine what allowance we have to meet the standards. This is a big challenge for all communities. We're going to be vying for the same designers, the same vendors of materials, and the same contractors to do the construction. And there's going to be a long line, and we're really concerned as far as just the feasibility and viability of completing this work within probably a 3-year period is what we're looking at. That's the overview.
All right, thank you very much. Questions? Again, on the article itself, go ahead.
Have you identified who are going to be the entities that will be experience the most significant impact from the rates that are going to be increased on this?
It's going to be across the board. So we have residential, commercial, industrial users. We're looking at, and we were already looking at a 12.5% rate increase. We sort of volunteered that last year. I will say, and it's important to know, and I'm just going to say that MCI was our largest customer, and their closure and relocation, while it has some great opportunities for the community in some respects, it will have an impact on the water rate for everybody.
So by that you mean a loss of revenue, in other words?
A loss of revenue, and really our costs are fixed. And we require the same staff, resources, distribution system, so we will have to make up that loss through rate adjustment.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pete. D.
3 years, is that a dream or is that a reality?
That's a regulatory norm, and we're hoping they're listening to public comments, and they're receiving hundreds of thousands of them to try and look at that schedule. Really, and I think it's important for people to understand, we're not taking a very high level of a concentration and bringing it to a low level. We're taking a very low level of a concentration and bringing it to a detectable level, but just above. And the cost benefit is a real concern to the industry, but we have to march based on the regulatory requirement. And they haven't promulgated the final rule yet. There's hope that maybe there'll be some acknowledgement of just the challenge of resources, not just funds, but designers, contractors, and materials for the entire country to be chasing the same goal.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Well, one other question. Should we have asked you some other questions?
What softball questions would you like to be asked?
No, I think the other question, it's not just because we have to do it, it does affect with MCI. And again, that's just the next hurdle we have. The cost of water is going up, whether it's drinking water, wastewater, or stormwater. And our job is just to understand what the standards are and what the needs of the communities are. But the costs are going up, there's no question.
Okay.
Great. Chris, do you have a question?
I do.
Okay, can you just stop right there for a minute, please? Were you able to unmute yourself by yourself, or did somebody here do it for you?
I unmuted myself.
Okay, we've got to fix that before Tuesday, but go ahead with your question.
Okay. Alan, so the water and sewer group has some pretty big reserves. So is the 50 million going to all come from debt, or are you going to use up reserves as well?
Yes, thank you. We do have healthy reserves because we anticipated certain costs, primarily for the NAGOG alone. The PFAS is in addition to. We will be drawing down the reserves as well as the borrowing. And we'll draw down the reserves first before we proceed with the borrowing. But I will say that our 10-year plan is somewhere between $50 and $100 million. It really depends on where things go and the costs of producing this clean water.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the Finance Committee? I don't see any raised hands from members of the public, so I think you're all set. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's go back to the agenda. We had a couple items to discuss. I'm just going to rattle through these because I don't think we have any more information, right? So Article 7, we'll know when we get to town meeting or before that. Do we have anything new on Article 7, which is budget line adjustment?
We're going to make the adjustment for the $515,000 that was booked as a negative against general government this year. That's what we're going to have to present, at least that right now.
At town meeting.
At town meeting,
So this article will be moved?
yes.
Okay. So, okay, that sounds
The
good.
article will be moved.
Yes. Article 14, I think we had asked for an update on exactly kind of where free cash stand. If we can't do
Yeah.
it now,
So I emailed you just a chart for the last 10 years. So we have,
to the whole Finance Committee?
just you, I was going to put it on the screen tonight, but I can't get back in.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't put it on the screen right now.
But, so just, free cash is being submitted tomorrow. And right now, we're estimating at $8.5 million, which is slightly higher. And Liz, if you can bring up that,
No, we're safe right now. Here's what I'm suggesting. Let's forward what you sent to me to the entire FinCom. After Tuesday's hearing, we can bring it up and have a discussion then about free cash.
Right.
Okay? I want to avoid any downtime here. CCRSD school budget, I have not heard anything new about whether they've hit our guidelines. Have we heard anything? So I would just suggest, again, we wait until Tuesday, see if we've gotten anything new. Article 21 in our packet for the restroom building, they've ruled out going ahead with the whole thing, which is great. And they're debating whether to spend $150,000 on consulting or withdrawing the whole thing, which is, I think, is a step in the right direction. To the extent that they come forward with 150, I think lots of folks here with experience in construction would say that that's probably a high number, and we could ask them questions when they come back.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
By the way, speak up now or forever hold your truth as I'm going through these things, right? Public schools capital budget, we had decided to defer on that until I think we had asked for a little bit more information. We have not gotten anything more from them, have we?
Marcia,
Which one are you-
what else do we need for the capital?
The public schools capital budget.
That's the 446,000, right?
That's the 446. I had marked it down as deferred.
What else did we need?
In the minutes,
The question on like the 200 or?
I can tell you.
yeah, go ahead, Chris, thank you.
So,
that's right.
the largest component of that was $200,000 for Thoreau.
Right.
And there was supposed to be a presentation to the school committee this month on that.
Right.
Where they would get a better sense of how that money is going to be spent. And that's what I was saying, we should defer until we see that.
So it's the 200,000, got it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Chris. And Lindsay and others that have better memory than I do. Yeah, notes. And then Article 25, the appropriation on the, on the stabilization fund, we did get an update, which was in our packet, I believe. And Anthony, I wasn't able to compare the update with what was actually presented the other day, so where do we stand?
Yeah, so from my understanding, the goal was $5 million for middle school stabilization
correct.
fund.
Yep.
So right now, with the last statement that we have for the, in the bank, it's $477,000, and I put that bank statement in your packet.
Yep.
So really, you really don't have to use anything from free cash on this article, because for the next, next month, we're gonna get about $20,000 a month in interest, so we'll hit that $5 million mark by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
I
So it sounds like,
free cash, because we're getting the interest.
so it sounds like we can leave the 600,000 in free cash. And is it true that it can just sit there, or does it actually have to be used for middle school spending at all?
You can stay in free cash and then
Okay,
generate.
so let's entertain some questions, and then I've got a,
Yeah, Anthony, can the interest move into the stabilization fund without being voted
Yes,
on?
it's in its own separate account.
Okay.
that's the way it's been.
Asked, can it be moved into the stabilization
Oh.
fund without?
The interest.
Well, as I understand, the vote is on whether or not to move money from free cash into stabilization. So I realize the interest will make it up, but does it have to be appropriated to the stabilization?
Just, why don't you just come up here, Carrie?
So maybe I'm thinking of two different questions. So or maybe not. The middle school stabilization fund is in its own bank account.
Right.
Receiving interest.
Right.
We would, that's a tricky question. Because.
You're going to give us a straight answer, though.
I am, and my straight answer is actually, it's a tricky question. I think we probably have to check that, because nothing goes into or out of a stabilization fund without a vote.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be in a separate bank account, but we would allocate the interest. I would say the interest could be allocated without, the interest that it's currently receiving allocated without a
Well, let me
vote.
ask a stupid question.
No, I cannot raise my hand.
Well, that's-
I'm the host. This is Elizabeth Rohr.
Yeah, so were you going to provide an answer? Because I had another question, actually, Elizabeth.
I was going to provide an answer.
So, go ahead, Nan, let me pose my question. We deposited like even dollar amounts into the stabilization fund in the past so I don't remember taking finance committee votes or anything else for this account to grow there, so I'm assuming it'll just sit there.
Yeah. So the difference, though, is the $600,000 interest that will go to free cash is on the
Was on
bonds.
bonds. Never mind, sorry, that's it, thank you. Okay.
That's different money.
Yes, different money. Okay, I'm sorry. Liz, you were going to say something?
That's all I was going to say.
But the 600,000 does not have to be spent on any school-related stuff. And so if this is going to grow to 5 million anyway, of its own accord, I would propose that we withdraw the article and just let it sit in free cash.
No reason to exist.
Wait, now I'm confused. It's in a separate bank account, that's the stabilization fund, correct?
No, the stabilization fund is going to get to 5 million by itself.
It's going to get to 5 million.
Yes, it
because
is.
of interest.
Because of the interest.
A month, it's at 477.
It's going to get close to it.
So it's going to, and the interest that is being accrued on the principal amount of the stabilization fund becomes part of the stabilization fund.
Yes.
Okay, so then I completely agree with Parashar, that what we need to do is just let the stabilization fund do its thing. It's going to, the stabilization fund, by the time we're ready to start drawing it down, will exceed the amount that we had set as a goal, and we don't need to make an allocation. this year from free cash to the stabilization fund. So that article does not need to be moved,
Right.
and
Right.
that's more money in free cash to do other things with or to leave in free cash, depending on what happens at town meeting.
Dawn, we're not pulling it out for another year until next town meeting, so we're going to get another whole year's worth of interest.
You're gonna get another 240,000 in interest.
Yeah, which is going to get it pretty damn
Minimum.
close to 5 million.
Right.
And even if it's a 4.9, I'd be comfortable with it. I mean,
Yeah, I thought that
Close
the
enough.
interest was accruing elsewhere, and we have to allocate it to a stabilization.
no.
Okay.
Okay.
So that means we're not going to move Article 25?
That's an idea.
Well, is it our article or is it the town's article?
I think it's ours. We could just say not move, right?
Oh, yeah, so I would
vote on
make a motion that the Finance Committee just determine that it is not going to move Article 25 at town meeting.
Because the school stabilization fund?
Because the interest being earned on the school stabilization fund will achieve the goal amount before the fund is actually being used.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
so just a question for Carrie. So, Carrie, are you comfortable?
No, it's a
that
question
the-
for Anthony, but keep going. Keep
Okay.
going, Chris.
I mean, are we comfortable that the 5 million is going to achieve what we intended in terms of leveling out the hit to the taxpayer? So those calculations were done 2 years ago. So I just, I just curious whether we want to redo the math and sort of say, yeah, it still works, 5 million still the number.
We have time to make this motion at a later meeting if,
Well, let's hear the question, and then we can, or let's hear the answer.
So what I would say is, I've been very pleasantly surprised at how the issuances and the impact are tracking to the projections we made. So the $5 million that we talked about a few years ago is going to do about the same thing. Doesn't mean you can't do more, because we certainly are hearing from taxpayers about the impact of the middle school, the growth in the budget, the residential exemption. We're certainly hearing more than probably we anticipated hearing 2 or 3 years ago. But everything is tracking very well according to the projections.
And I would say that leaving the 500,000 in free cash, to the extent that we hear more and we want to give 1.5 back to reduce the tax levy, we have that flexibility. Versus versus just sticking it in the school stabilization fund.
Yeah, Carrie,
right? Yeah.
Carrie and I were talking a little bit earlier, and I said, geez, if we just leave the 5 million in there year after year and just use the interest starting next year, and this way it would knock, maybe $250,000 off the excluded debt.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
That's good.
Okay.
So are we going to continue this discussion at another time?
I've got a motion,
There's
and
a
I've got a
motion.
second, we've got a
You have a
debate.
motion?
Anybody want to call for a vote, or anybody have any other additional comments or thoughts?
Well, we're not going to move the article.
No,
Is the motion-
no,
No, we're voting, the motion is
to not move.
to not move the
Move the
article.
article.
The motion
Not
is
that.
to withdraw the article.
Right.
Okay.
So any other discussion, debate? I don't hear any, so I'm going to call for a vote.
Okay, Dee, do you want to call the
Roll
roll?
call.
Roll call.
Okay, roll call.
We-
Sayrish,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Peggy,
Yes.
Kathy Kukalo. All right, Eric Dahlberg.
Hold on, she's
Wait,
mute. She's mute, but it sounds like a yes. I can lip read now.
Kathy, want to do a thumbs up?
Kathy's a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Eric,
Yes.
John Garofalo
here.
is not here. Amrith is not here. Don,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Dee, yes. Parashar,
Yes.
Carlin,
Aye.
Christine,
Yes.
Quasi's not here, and Lois.
Yes.
All right.
All right. We
Unanimous.
accomplished something. Oh, sorry,
You
Greg.
missed
Yes.
Greg.
You,
Parash, I was
is here.
anticipating that yes vote.
Yeah.
Where have you been?
I
don't know.
Absolutely. Greg?
We're gonna have to correct the meeting minutes.
Ahead of time.
Send an email. Send an email right now.
All right, so that passes unanimously.
Greg.
Awesome. I don't think we had any correspondence. What do you want to do with the minutes, Dee?
What I would like to do with the minutes is if anybody, I have received comments by email from 2 people.
Okay.
If anybody would like to submit any other comments,
Email them.
corrections, et cetera, to the minutes,
Well,
and this is for the latest set of minutes, then I would like you to do it by Saturday.
those are for the March
To
meeting.
me, and just keep it between you and me. Another person involved would start off a whole study group or something. I think we could look at the first set of minutes, which is the February ones,
Well, the January ones.
January ones, that amendment to the amendment, and
Can we trust that those corrections have been made?
that correction has been made.
Can I get a motion to approve the January minutes?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Okay, roll call. Sarish?
Aye.
Peggy? Not there. Aye. Kathy? Not there. Eric?
Kathy's
I'm sorry. Kathy?
Yes.
A serene smile.
Eric?
Yes.
John? Nope, he's not there. Greg?
Yes.
No. Amrith? Don?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Dee? Yes. Parashar?
Yes.
Carlin?
Aye.
Chris?
Yes.
Quasi's not here. Lois?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Did you get Greg?
Did you get Greg?
She did. She did.
Okay, the February meetings were also supposed to have been corrected.
Yes, they-
So can I get a motion? I'm going to assume they've been corrected. Can I get a motion?
I move we approve the
Okay.
February 15th.
Second.
Okay,
Do it again, Dee.
all right. Suresh?
Aye.
Peggy?
Aye.
Kathy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
John's not here. Greg?
Abstain.
Huh?
Jane,
I
okay.
wasn't at the meeting.
Amaranth
I don't
is not here.
vote on my meetings, so-
Don?
Aye.
All right, Lindsay?
Yes.
Dee, yes. Parashar?
Yes.
Carlin?
Aye.
Christine?
Yes.
Quasi's not here. Lois?
Yes.
So we had everybody and 1 abstention.
Greg. All right, thank you. That was the last of the official business. Before,
March ones, but the March ones are the ones you're going
That's right.
to email me.
And a big thank you to Laura Gavino, who's been working really hard to keep up
She
with
really
this.
Thank you, Lori.
Absolutely.
Getting all the drafts together.
So one last announcement. It has been a pleasure serving on the Finance Committee. My term is over at the end of this April, May, whenever we have the town meeting. There's going to be some, you too?
No.
Oh, okay.
Are we going to have a party or something?
I already threw one. But in any case, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, guys. I know some of you have only served with the last year or two, and others, like Chris, for the last 5 years. It's Chris's last year also. So a big thank you to Chris. She's been a great mentor to me as chair, and of invaluable resources we saw many times just today, in terms of following things over and over again. So it's been a pleasure, and good luck, Eric. We do, by the way, have 3 new members coming on. They should be getting their letters in the next day or 2. So we will have I'm going to let Lois, or Carmen kind of introduce who they are. But I just want to let you guys know that I will not be with you guys, maybe in spirit. Both kinds of spirit.
Watch every meeting, though, right?
You're leaving entirely.
I'm leaving entirely. It's been 5 years.
Today?
Aren't you allowed 3?
No.
That would be 8 years. You tell
He
me.
didn't come on for 3 and 3. He didn't come on for 3 and 3. You did like 2.
I filled in somebody's term. The first term, I filled in for 2 years for somebody, and then I got reappointed for 3.
Okay, yeah.
So that's
My
fine.
understanding is you can extend for a year, Parashar.
Yeah, well,
For good behavior.
Carrie didn't look kindly on that comment. been a thorn in people's side, so it's enough.
No, no.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Parashar.
I will. I said at the end, I said town meeting.
Town meeting is.
So the town meeting will be the last one. I'll bring a gavel or something for you.
Here you go, Eric.
All right?
We'll see how town meeting
Yeah.
goes.
All right, let's adjourn the meeting. Oh, hold on. Did you have a comment?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
9:41, okay, thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Greg, I've never been so aware of being in the room as I was. That shit was going on.